Welcome into this latest edition of Bills Take Two. I'm Jonathan Acosta, joined here by our WGRZ Bills insider, Vic Carucci. Some more free agency pickups to make note of with the Buffalo Bills. The biggest one of their biggest ones of free agency, quite frankly, the Bills signing safety Mike Edwards. Super Bowl experience with the Bucs and Chiefs now comes to play in Buffalo alongside Taylor Rapp. Vic, what's your sense of what the Bills were looking for at safety and what they're getting with Edwards joining the team?
I think this is one of the outstanding under-the-radar free agent signings of the entire period for the entire league. He brings, of course, experience, but he also brings some pretty good talent to a secondary that desperately needs that. And when you look at the departures of both Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, to come back with Edwards and then Taylor Rapp as the likely replacements, you've done pretty well for yourself. I'm not saying that they will replicate what Hyde and Poyer were at their best, but they will be solid. They will be, I think, a good pairing and provide not only, again, the ability to make plays, but to help kind of keep things in order, which is what that safety position is all about, as well as coverage and supporting against the run. It's the idea that the entire secondary, everybody is where they're supposed to be.
Since we last spoke, the Bills also re-signed running back Ty Johnson, and his situation was interesting because he joins the team with the season in progress. We think Latavius Murray is going to be kind of that second guy, that change of pace back with James Cook. It really ends up being Ty Johnson down the stretch, and he had some flashes where he made some really nice plays for this team. How big do you think that pickup is in terms of strengthening that running back room for next season? And do you think that's still a position the Bills might address in the draft?
Keeping Ty Johnson aboard, extremely important, I think, to this offense, because you have a player who is an instinctive runner, a very smart runner, and his second, third effort play is really what I think separates him from the other backs the Bills have and makes him, in situations, someone you really want in the backfield. Short yardage, goal line. He is just a nice fit for this offense. Not going to be your main workforce guy. That's James Cook. But he is definitely going to be a player who participates, contributes, I think, in a meaningful way.
The Bills also signing defensive lineman Casey Toohill. And just when you take that in the broader context of the Bills' free agency moves, not a whole ton of splashes, but some good solid pickups. As this free agency sort of winds down for the Bills, what kind of grade would you give to Brandon Beane and the job they've been able to do?
I think it is probably no lower than a B. Maybe some people aren't excited about it because they didn't see a lot of splash moves, and that's usually what gives teams the higher grades during free agency. But to me, the ability to keep two of the three biggest names you had entering free agency in A.J. Epinesa and having Daquan Jones aboard, and the two of them on the D-line, that's huge. Yes, it would have been nice to have had Leonard Floyd, and I still think there's an opening for this team to get a pass rusher probably in the draft. They really need to improve that area of the team, and you can't rely simply on Von Miller being healthy to get that done. But I also think that they, by retaining Ty Johnson as well, and then getting Curtis Samuel in free agency, they've done solid to very good things. Samuel gives them a legitimate number 2 player at the receiver position, and I know there's been this cloud over Stefon Diggs. I'm expecting Diggs to stay with this football team. I think a lot's been made of something that probably won't change perhaps until next season or next offseason. But for the time being, it's Diggs still at number 1. And I don't know that they necessarily upgraded the number 2 spot, but I don't think they took a backward step after losing Gabe Davis.
The Bills also made an off-the-field addition, bringing in Pete Gwelly as the Bills and Sabres COO. Just what more can you tell us about what his role is going to be with his team and maybe how important that addition is at this time in the Bills' cycle, especially with the new stadium on the horizon?
what would seem to make this a really good addition to the front office is Pete's history, especially with the Bills. I mean, that's where he had some time on that marketing end, and he oversaw the move from Fredonia to St. John Fisher for training camp, that move into the Rochester market, which early on was a very important step for the Bills to take, to kind of have a bigger presence there. And Pete oversaw that, and Pete has a great understanding, of course, of that market. Now, I think a lot of the work he's going to have to do with the entire ownership of the Pegulas is probably heavier on the Sabre side. I think there's more work that needs to be done there from a business end, where attendance is soft, where the team continues to struggle enough on the ice to where it's probably harder to sell those tickets. But from the Bills standpoint, and with a new stadium on the horizon, you're looking at the need to have someone serve as a point for the entire organization. Even though Legends is handling the bulk of the heaviest lifting for the sale of season tickets, the PSLs, all the things that are happening now, Pete, I think, still gives them someone that they need, at least at the very least, a cog between the ownership of the team and a company, this third party, so to speak, that is doing so much critical work to get those seats sold for a new stadium. It's a big job, and I don't envy Pete, because he's got a lot on his plate dealing with the two teams, but his credentials are strong. His background in both the NBA and the NFL, I think, helps his vision, and working in a market like Charlotte, coming from a place where he could see it's a bigger financial market perhaps than Buffalo, but he certainly can, I think, get a feel for trying to get people excited and aboard with a product, which is, in the case of Buffalo, football and hockey.
And finally, looking ahead, the NFL league meetings, annual league meetings coming up in Orlando on Monday. Vic, just what can we expect to maybe come out of these meetings? We know Sean McDermott's on the competition committee, and two big rule changes are scheduled to be discussed with the hip drop tackle, a big point of emphasis for the NFL, and also changes to the kickoff to make it a little bit more like what we've seen out of the XFL. What's your sense in how important those two rule changes are for the league, and maybe them wanting to implement them for this upcoming season?
Talking with Sean McDermott at the Combine, he was saying that safety was the priority in the conversations that he and the rest of the competition committee were having there. And that continues to be the case. With kickoffs, I mean, it could reach a point, and some coaches around the NFL have talked about this, of just doing away with kickoffs altogether, putting the ball in the 25 and going from there. That's not going to happen anytime soon. It may not happen at all. But another modification that reduces the contact, where the competition committee and the studies that have been done, that's where a lot of the injuries show up. And then this hip drop tackle, which is sort of a glorified version of the horse collar. I mean, you're getting a defender gets the ball carrier from behind and then uses his own weight to bring, and that's what the hip drop is, his weight to bring that player down from behind. And it's seen as a really dangerous play, because legs can bend awkwardly, so can the entire body. And it can be, I think, a problem mostly for the ball carrier, but possibly for the defender as well. The challenge, though, is going to be to really define what that is and how it should be officiated. I think officials already have an extremely tough job, and we know that there are a lot of questions about the quality of officiating, or lack thereof, from a quality standpoint. And if you're adding another layer to this, another judgment to what a hip drop is or isn't, that could also lead to some complications.
I think you hit the nail on the head there with especially the hip drop tackle, adding another layer for officials to have to think through, more controversy for officials to have to deal with in games, something that the NFL may not be wanting. As always, a bunch of great insight from Vic. Vic, thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the March Madness games this weekend.